Scott joins us now from Orlando. Scott, you have been reporting from Orlando since Sunday. How are people there coping?
Well, Elaine, it helped somewhat today that some of the mystery, some of the anticipation was taken away when all of the victims were identified. Yesterday, I just can't tell you how wrenching it was for people who weren't able to find their loved ones. Gathered at the hospitals, crowds of people at the hospitals, hoping that their loved one was in the hospital, because if they were, that meant they weren't one of the 50 bodies in the Pulse Club, which is behind me. Now they have sorted through all of that. We know who the dead are, we know who the survivors are. And one great bit of news today, Elaine, I spoke to a number of surgeons who were working on the victims as they came into the hospital just a couple of blocks from here. Yesterday they were pessimistic. They were telling us that they thought the death toll would rise, but today all of the patients seem to be improving, and the doctors told me today they expect that all of them will pull through now.
Oh, that is such good news. Scott, so we heard in very chilling detail how it is that the attack unfolded, those details that you spelled out in your piece there. I wonder what the reaction is from folks there about the law enforcement officials' response. Do they seem satisfied with how it is that law enforcement officials handled this situation?
Generally, I would say they do seem satisfied. I want to add something, Elaine. There was a good deal of talk in the story that we just ran about the gunman putting suicide vests on some of the hostages. That was apparently a bluff. Once the police officers got in there, they discovered that he didn't have any explosives of any kind. But one of the things that was critical here was the action of the first 3 police officers going in right away, not waiting for any more backup, and forcing the gunman to the back of the club and into a restroom. It was at that point that only about 4 or 5 people were being held hostage. And so when that occurred, the police felt they had some time to see if they could talk to this man, to see if they could get those hostages released without having to assault the building. So a couple of hours passed while he was calling 911. The police were calling him back once they had his telephone number. A hostage negotiator called Mateen and talked to him for a while. And so they had time. But when they started to hear about these suicide vests, which turned out to not exist, they felt that they had run out of time. And so the SWAT team assaulted the building and rescued a great many more people as well. So this could have been much worse. Even though it is the worst shooting in American history, it could have been much worse had it not been for the action of the people in the club, those first 3 police officers, and then finally the SWAT team that put an end to all of this.
Scott, you've also done some powerful reporting on the victims. I wonder what struck you most about them?
Youth. 19 years old is the youngest one, many in their 20s, some in their early 30s. Youth is what struck me really about the victims. They're nearly all Hispanic, men and women, people who were starting out in life, establishing careers, working on getting married. And to me, that is one of the underlying tragedies here, that so many young lives were taken for nothing, and that these people are now planning funerals who were going to be planning weddings.
Heartbreaking to hear their stories. Scott Pelley reporting from Orlando. Scott, thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Great to be with you on CBSN.